Most people believe value is subjective. They think it's random, accidental, or determined by forces beyond their control. They believe some are born lucky, others talented, and the rest simply struggle through. This is a comforting lie. Value is not mystical. It is not a matter of opinion. Value follows laws as predictable as gravity, as inevitable as compounding interest, as undeniable as cause and effect. And once you understand these laws, you stop waiting for permission, recognition, or opportunity. You engineer it. The world rewards those who understand one fundamental truth. Value is not what you think you offer. It is what someone else desperately needs, wants, or fears losing. And when you position yourself as the source of relief, elevation, or transformation in someone else's reality, the system corrects in your favor. Money follows. Opportunities emerge. Doors open that were previously invisible. This is not metaphor. This is mechanism. What you're about to experience is not another motivational speech about working harder or believing in yourself. This is a forensic examination of how value is created, perceived, extracted, and rewarded across every domain of human activity. Whether you're building a business, advancing a career, creating content, developing relationships, or simply trying to move through the world with more leverage and less resistance, the principles you're about to learn apply universally. They work in marketing and medicine. They work in art and engineering. They work in leadership and sales. They work because they are rooted in human psychology, economic reality, and social mechanics that have existed long before you were born and will persist long after you're gone. By the end of this video, you will see the world differently. You will recognize value where others see nothing. You will understand why certain people rise effortlessly while others work tirelessly and remain invisible. You will grasp why some businesses explode while identical competitors fail, and most importantly, you will know exactly what to do next. Let's begin with the first principle, and it is the most powerful one you will ever learn. Value is born from pain, urgency, and cost. The more expensive a problem is, the more valuable its solution becomes. This is not theory. This is pricing law. A headache pill costs pennies. Brain surgery costs thousands. Both solve pain, but one addresses catastrophic cost. The difference is not effort. It is stakes. Now, here is where most people fail. They wait to be asked. They wait for someone to identify the problem, articulate the need, and request help. By then, the opportunity is commoditized. The real value creators solve expensive problems before anyone asks. They see the pressure building. They recognize the pattern. They intervene before the crisis arrives. And when they do, they are no longer vendors. They are essential. Think about this carefully. When you solve a problem after it explodes, you are a responder. When you solve it before it detonates, you are a strategist. Responders get paid. Strategists get remembered. Responders are replaceable. Strategists become irreplaceable. The person who tells you your website will crash under traffic before the launch is more valuable than the one who fixes it afterward. The person who restructures your team before turnover decimates morale is more valuable than the recruiter who replaces people after they leave. The person who identifies the legal vulnerability before the lawsuit is more valuable than the attorney who defends you in court. This is how you build leverage. You remove pressure before it becomes visible. You eliminate cost before it compounds. You prevent disaster before it has a name. And when you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. People begin to trust you not just with tasks, but with outcomes. They begin to see you not as a tool, but as a guardian. And guardians are never negotiated down. They are invested in. Here is the brutal truth most will never accept. People pay more for prevention than for repair. A collapsed building costs millions to rebuild. A structural inspection costs hundreds. The inspection is cheap. The consequence of ignoring it is catastrophic. Yet most people, most businesses, most leaders wait until the building collapses. They ignore the cracks. They dismiss the warning signs. They tell themselves it will hold, and when it doesn't, they panic, overpay, and resent the cost. You are not that person. You are the one who sees the cracks. You are the one who raises the flag. You are the one who absorbs the discomfort of being right too early. And because you do this, you become the person others cannot afford to lose. This is not about being paranoid. It is about being perceptive. It is about pattern recognition. It is about seeing what is inevitable before it arrives. Let's move to the second principle, and this one governs nearly every transaction, relationship, and decision in the modern world. Time is the most expensive currency. Not money, not attention, time. Because time cannot be recovered, replicated, or reversed. Every second spent is a second lost forever. And anything that saves time, reduces friction, or eliminates mental effort immediately increases in perceived value. Think about the products and services you pay for without hesitation: food delivery, transportation apps, software that automates repetitive tasks, assistants who handle logistics, consultants who synthesize complex information into clear decisions. What are you really buying? You are buying time. You are buying the ability to focus on what matters. You are buying the elimination of exhaustion. This is why simplicity is not basic. Simplicity is elite. The person who can take a convoluted process and reduce it to 3 steps is not offering less. They are offering freedom. The person who can explain a complex concept in 2 sentences is not dumbing it down. They are creating clarity, and clarity is one of the most valuable commodities in a world drowning in information. Here is the mistake people make. They believe more is better. More features, more options, more words, more steps, more complexity signals sophistication. It doesn't. Complexity signals insecurity. It signals a lack of mastery. True mastery is the ability to compress without loss, to distill without dilution, to simplify without sacrificing substance. When you make something easier for someone, you are not just saving them effort. You are removing the emotional cost of decision fatigue, uncertainty, and overwhelm, and people will pay extraordinary amounts to avoid those feelings. This is why user experience design is worth billions. This is why clear communication commands premium fees. This is why the best salespeople are not the ones who talk the most, but the ones who make buying feel inevitable, obvious, and effortless. If you want to become valuable, ask yourself this question every single day. What friction am I removing from someone else's experience? What mental effort am I eliminating? What decision am I making easier? What time am I giving back? Because when you consistently answer these questions with action, you don't need to sell yourself. You become the default choice. Now we arrive at the third principle, and this one makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to confront something they would rather ignore. Value is not only utility, it is perception. Human beings are not purely rational. They are social animals operating within hierarchies, and everything they do is influenced by how it affects their position within that hierarchy. This is not cynical. This is biological. Status, security, and confidence are survival mechanisms hardwired into our psychology, and anything that increases these feelings is perceived as valuable regardless of its objective utility. Let me be direct. People do not buy products. They buy identity upgrades. They do not hire services. They hire transformations. They do not invest in relationships. They invest in mirrors that reflect a better version of themselves. The car is not transportation. It is status. The degree is not education. It is credibility. The personal trainer is not fitness. It is confidence. The luxury brand is not quality. It is separation from the ordinary. This is why 2 identical products can have wildly different prices. One signals nothing. The other signals everything. One is a transaction. The other is a statement. And statements cost more because they broadcast to the world and to the self that you have arrived. Now you can reject this. You can say it's shallow, superficial, or materialistic, But if you reject it, you reject reality. And reality does not care about your moral preferences. It operates according to patterns. And one of those patterns is this: status opens doors before skill is evaluated. Confidence creates opportunities before competence is tested. Security allows risk that insecurity prevents. When you understand this, you stop offering features. You start offering elevation. You stop selling what something does. You start selling who someone becomes. And when you do this authentically, when you genuinely help someone rise, the reciprocity is automatic. They do not resent you. They evangelize you. Because you didn't just solve a problem, you changed how they see themselves. The fourth principle is perhaps the most overlooked, yet it separates leaders from followers, strategists from executors, and authorities from amateurs. Information is cheap. Clarity is rare. We live in an era of infinite data and zero understanding. Everyone has access to the same information, yet most remain paralyzed, confused, or overwhelmed. Why? Because information without interpretation is noise. Raw data without context is useless. Options without direction create anxiety, not empowerment. Value comes from organizing complexity into actionable insight. This is what consultants do. This is what educators do. This is what great leaders do. They take the overwhelming, the contradictory, the uncertain, and they distill it into a clear path forward. They reduce uncertainty. And whoever reduces uncertainty controls outcomes. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most relieved, most grateful, most willing to pay. It was almost always when someone provided clarity in the midst of chaos. When someone told you exactly what to do, in what order, and why it would work. When someone removed the fog and revealed the path. That feeling of relief is the sound of value being created. This is why experts are not just knowledgeable. They are decisive. They don't present 17 options and let you flounder. They present the one option that matters and explain why. They don't overwhelm you with nuance. They give you certainty. And certainty is intoxicating. Certainty is magnetic. Certainty is what people follow, fund, and promote. If you want to become indispensable, become the person who creates clarity. Become the person who walks into confusion and says, "Here is what is actually happening. Here is what it means, and here is what we do next." Do this consistently, and you will never lack opportunity. Because the world is chaos, and those who organize chaos into order are the architects of everything that matters. Let's move to the fifth principle, and this one is the foundation of wealth, influence, and power. Networks create value faster than capital. Let me say that again. Networks create value faster than capital. You can have money and still be limited. You can have skill and still be invisible. But if you have access, if you have relationships, if you have the ability to connect the right people to the right resources at the right time, you become the center of gravity. You become the bridge. And bridges are more powerful than spotlight positions. Most people think influence comes from being the star. It doesn't. Influence comes from being the connector, the person who introduces the investor to the founder, the talent to the opportunity, the solution to the problem. That person is not the loudest in the room. They are the most valuable, because they are the reason things happen. Here is what most people miss. When you connect two parties who both benefit from the introduction, you create value for both of them simultaneously, and that value compounds into reputation, trust, and reciprocity. They don't just owe you a favor, they owe you outcomes. And outcomes create loyalty faster than any contract ever could. This is why being strategically indispensable is more valuable than being operationally essential. The operator can be replaced. The strategist cannot. Because the strategist controls access, they control flow, they control who meets whom, who learns what, and who benefits from what. And when you control flow, you control leverage. If you want to accelerate your trajectory, stop hoarding relationships. Start creating value by aligning incentives. Ask yourself, who do I know that could benefit from knowing each other? What introduction could I make that would generate mutual value? What bridge could I build that would position me as the architect, not just a participant? Because when you make powerful introductions, you are not spending social capital. You are compounding it. Now we reach the sixth principle, and this one will separate those who lead from those who follow forever. Value increases in proportion to responsibility assumed. Risk is not something to avoid. Risk is something to absorb. Because when you absorb risk, you free others to move forward. You remove their hesitation. You eliminate their excuse. And in doing so, you position yourself as the one who makes things possible. Think about every major decision, investment, or commitment you've made. What stopped you from acting sooner? It was risk, the fear of loss, the uncertainty of outcome, the possibility of failure. And what finally allowed you to move? Someone else absorbed part of that risk, a guarantee, a partnership, a commitment, a promise. And in that moment, they became more valuable to you than anyone who simply cheered from the sidelines. This is the essence of leadership. Leadership is not visibility. Leadership is the willingness to stand between chaos and outcome, to say, I will carry this, I will ensure this. If this fails, it fails on me. And when you do that, trust is not requested, it is automatic. Because people do not follow those who inspire them, they follow those who protect them. Here is the brutal reality. Most people avoid responsibility because they fear blame. But blame is temporary. Authority is permanent. When you consistently absorb risk, when you stand in the fire and deliver anyway, something shifts. You are no longer evaluated by the same standards. You are no longer compared to others. You become the standard. And standards are not negotiated. They are accepted. If you want to rise faster than your peers, stop waiting for credit. Start accepting blame. Stop avoiding pressure. Start seeking it. Stop negotiating responsibility. Start volunteering for it. Because the person who carries the weight is the person who builds the strength, and strength over time becomes irreplaceable. The seventh principle is the most underestimated, yet it is the foundation of every long-term success you will ever witness. Reliability is rare, and rarity creates demand. In a world of empty promises, unmet expectations, and abandoned commitments, consistency is not common. It is exceptional, and exceptional becomes expensive. Think about the people you trust most, the businesses you return to, the creators you follow, the professionals you recommend. What do they have in common? They show up. They deliver. They do what they say they will do, when they say they will do it, at the level they promised. This sounds simple. It is not. Because consistency requires discipline, systems, and integrity when no one is watching. Most people are phenomenal when motivated. They are brilliant when inspired. They are reliable when convenient. But the moment pressure increases, motivation fades, or circumstances shift, they disappear. They make excuses. They lower standards. They renegotiate expectations. And in doing so, they destroy trust. And trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Here is what you must understand. Reputation compounds faster than talent. A talented person who is unreliable will always lose to a competent person who is consistent. Because consistency builds predictability. Predictability builds trust. And trust builds long-term relationships, recurring revenue, and compounding opportunities. If you want to build a career, a business, or a life that does not require you to constantly prove yourself, become the person who delivers under pressure. Become the person who shows up when others quit. Become the person who maintains standards when standards become difficult. Because when you do this, you don't need to market yourself. Your reputation does it for you. Before we continue, I want you to do something right now. I want you to pause and leave a comment below with this exact phrase. Value is inevitable when given without negotiation. Write it. Commit to it publicly. Because public commitment creates internal accountability. When you declare something in front of others, you are no longer just considering an idea. You are embodying an identity. An identity dictates behavior. If you found value in what you've learned so far, hit the like button. Subscribe to this channel. Not because I need it, but because you need the reminder. Every time you see a new upload, you are being called back to this standard, this decision, this path. And repetition builds permanence. Now, let's recalibrate. Everything you've learned so far is foundational. These are the principles that govern how. Value is created, recognized, and rewarded in everyday life. But what you're about to learn next is different. What comes next is reserved for those who are willing to operate at a level most will never reach. The principles ahead are more subtle, more strategic, and significantly more dangerous in the hands of someone who lacks integrity. If you are still here, it is because you are not that person. You are someone who understands that power without principle is destruction, that leverage without ethics is exploitation, that influence without responsibility is manipulation, and you reject that path. What you are about to discover is how to see value where others see nothing, how to transform ordinary situations into leverage, how to position yourself in ways that create disproportionate returns, and how to ensure that when you give value, it does not disappear into the void, but returns amplified, multiplied, and inevitable. Let me start with a truth that will change how you evaluate every interaction, transaction, and relationship moving forward. When you improve someone's position, financially, emotionally, socially, or strategically, the system corrects in your favor. This is not karma, this is mechanics. Human beings operate within systems of reciprocity. When you create asymmetric value, when you give disproportionately more than is expected, the debt is not forgotten, it is carried. And eventually, it is repaid, often in ways you could not have predicted, at times you did not anticipate, through channels you did not design. But here is the critical distinction. The value must be genuine. It must be strategic. It must be given with no expectation of immediate return. Because the moment you give with strings attached, you are no longer creating value. You are negotiating, and negotiation is transactional. Transactions are finite. But value that is given freely, intelligently, and with precision compounds indefinitely. Let me give you an example. You meet someone in a position of influence. Most people try to extract. They ask for advice, introductions, opportunities. They take. And in taking, they become a cost, a drain, a liability. But what if instead you gave? What if you identified something they needed, something they were struggling with, something that was costing them time, energy, or opportunity, and you solved it? Not for payment, not for recognition, not even for acknowledgement. You simply solved it because you could, and because it aligned with who you are. What happens next? They remember. Not what you said, not what you promised, but what you did. And when the opportunity arises, when the door opens, when the resource becomes available, you are not competing for it. You are being offered it. Because you already proved your value. You already demonstrated your standard. And now, you are not asking. You are being invited. This is the game most people never learn to play. They are so focused on extraction that they never build the foundation for multiplication. They are so desperate for immediate return that they sabotage long-term compounding. They are so busy negotiating terms that they miss the opportunity to become undeniable. Here is the shift. Stop thinking about what you can get from every person, situation, or opportunity. Start thinking about what value you can inject into systems, relationships, and environments that will compound over time. Because when you operate from abundance, from generosity, from strategic intelligence, the return is not just equivalent, it is exponential. Now let's go deeper. There is a level of value creation that most never recognize. It is the ability to see latent potential in people, ideas, and situations that others dismiss. This is not just pattern recognition. This is vision. And vision creates asymmetric advantage. Think about every major success story you know, every breakthrough, every rise. At some point, someone saw value where others saw risk. Someone believed when others doubted. Someone invested when others hesitated. And that someone reaped disproportionate returns. Not because they were lucky, because they were perceptive. This is what venture capitalists do. They identify potential before it is proven. This is what talent scouts do. They recognize ability before it is validated. This is what visionary leaders do. They see the outcome before the evidence arrives. And because they act on that vision, they position themselves to capture value that others could not even imagine. You can do the same, not just with businesses or investments, but with people, with ideas, with situations. Ask yourself, who is undervalued right now? Who has skill but no platform? Who has potential but no access? Who has ideas but no resources? And what would happen if you became the bridge between their current position and their future potential? This is not charity, this is strategy. Because when you invest in people before they rise, before they have leverage, before they have options, the loyalty is absolute, the gratitude is enduring, and the returns when they arrive are disproportionate, not because you manipulated, but because you believed. And belief, when demonstrated through action, creates bonds that cannot be broken by contracts, competition, or time. Let's address something most people never think about: the role of timing in value creation. Most people focus on what to do. Almost no one focuses on when to do it. But timing is everything. The same action at different moments produces radically different outcomes. Value delivered too early is dismissed. Value delivered too late is irrelevant. But value delivered at the precise moment of maximum need is perceived as miraculous. And miracles are not forgotten. They are mythologized. They become stories, and stories become reputation. This is why awareness is a competitive advantage. The person who understands market cycles, human psychology, and situational dynamics can deliver value at the exact moment it is most needed, most appreciated, and most likely to compound. They don't guess. They observe. They track patterns. They anticipate inflection points. And when the moment arrives, they move decisively. Think about this in your own life. When have you felt most grateful, most indebted, most willing to reciprocate? It was almost always when someone helped you at a moment of desperation, uncertainty, or transition. When they stepped in, not because you asked, but because they saw. And that feeling, that memory, does not fade. It becomes a permanent variable in how you evaluate that person forever. If you want to create disproportionate value, learn to read timing. Learn to recognize when someone is at a crossroads, when a market is shifting, when an opportunity is emerging, when pressure is building, and position yourself to deliver value at that exact moment, not before, not after, exactly when. Now let's talk about scarcity, not artificial scarcity, real scarcity, the kind that comes from being genuinely rare. Most people try to manufacture scarcity through exclusivity, gatekeeping, or limited availability. This works in the short term. But it collapses the moment someone else offers the same thing with more accessibility. Real scarcity is not about limiting access. It is about being irreplaceable. How do you become irreplaceable? By developing a combination of skills, perspectives, and relationships that cannot be easily replicated. By operating at the intersection of multiple domains. By being the person who understands both technology and psychology, both art and business, both strategy and execution, because intersections are rare, and rare is valuable. Most people specialize vertically. They go deep in one field. This makes them competent. But competent is replaceable. The person who operates horizontally, who connects disparate domains, who synthesizes insights across industries, becomes exponentially more valuable. Because they see patterns others miss. They solve problems others cannot conceptualize. They create solutions others would never imagine. This is not about being a generalist. Generalists know a little about everything and master nothing. This is about being a synthesizer, someone who masters multiple domains deeply enough to extract principles, identify parallels, and apply insights across contexts. And when you do this, you don't compete. You operate in a category of one. Let's move to something even more subtle. The ability to create value through subtraction, not addition. Most people believe more is better. More features, more services, more content, more communication. But the highest level of value creation is knowing what to remove, what to simplify, what to eliminate, what to ignore. Think about the products you love most. They are not the ones with the most features. They are the ones that do one thing extraordinarily well. Think about the advice that changed your life. It was not a 10-step process. It was one sentence that clarified everything. Think about the people you respect most. They are not the ones who say the most. They are the ones who say what matters. This is the art of essentialism, the discipline of subtraction, the courage to say no. And it is one of the rarest forms of value creation because it requires confidence. It requires the belief that less, when executed perfectly, is more valuable than more, executed poorly. If you want to become indispensable, learn to remove. Remove complexity from processes. Remove ambiguity from communication. Remove distraction from environments. Remove ego from decisions. Because in a world that is constantly adding, the person who subtracts with precision becomes the architect of clarity. And clarity, as we established earlier, is one of the most valuable commodities in existence. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, money. Because ultimately, value must convert into tangible outcomes. And one of those outcomes is financial reward. But here is what most people misunderstand. Money is not the goal. Money is the feedback. It is the signal that you have created value in a form that others are willing to exchange resources for. And when you understand this, you stop chasing money and start engineering value. And when you engineer value consistently, money becomes inevitable. The mistake most people make is trying to extract money before they have created sufficient value. They launch before they validate. They charge before they deliver. They demand before they prove. And then they wonder why the market rejects them. The market is not cruel. The market is honest. It rewards value and ignores noise. And if you are being ignored, it is not because the market is broken. It is because the value is not yet sufficient. So how do you ensure the value is sufficient? You test. You iterate. You listen. You deliver value in small increments and observe the response. If people engage, you are on the right path. If people pay, you have validated demand. If people return, you have created loyalty. And loyalty is the foundation of sustainable income. Not tricks, not hacks, not manipulation. Loyalty, earned through consistency, integrity, and value delivered at a level that exceeds expectation. Let me share something that will change how you approach your work forever. Every time you create value for someone, you are not just completing a transaction. You are making a deposit into a relational account, and that account compounds. The first deposit may seem small, the second still modest. But by the 10th, the 20th, the 100th, the balance is significant. And when the balance is significant, the return is automatic. This is why short-term thinking destroys long-term wealth. The person who extracts maximum value from every transaction may win today, but they lose tomorrow. Because they burn bridges, they deplete trust, they create resentment, and resentment closes doors. But the person who gives disproportionately, who over-delivers consistently, who prioritizes relationship over transaction, builds a network of advocates. And advocates create opportunities that money cannot buy. Here is the final piece, and this is the one that will determine whether you apply what you have learned or return to the default patterns that have kept you where you are. Value given without expectation is the most powerful form of value there is, not because it is altruistic, but because it is strategic. When you give without demanding immediate return, you are playing a different game. You are playing the long game, the compounding game, the game where outcomes are not negotiated, they are inevitable. Let me be clear, this is not about being naive. This is not about giving endlessly to those who take without reciprocating. This is about being intelligent with your generosity. It is about identifying the people, the relationships, the opportunities where value given will compound, where investment will return, where trust will become leverage. And how do you identify these opportunities? You pay attention, you observe, you test. You give small amounts of value and watch what happens. If they reciprocate, you give more. If they appreciate, you deepen. If they align, you commit. But if they extract, you withdraw. Because your value is not infinite, your time is not limitless, and your energy must be directed toward those who multiply it, not those who drain it. This is the discipline of strategic generosity. Give abundantly, but give wisely. Invest deeply, but invest where the soil is fertile. Build relationships, but build with those who build in return. Because the goal is not to be liked. The goal is to be valuable, and valuable people are selective. Not because they are arrogant, but because they understand that leverage is created through concentration, not diffusion. So here is what you do next. You take everything you have learned in this video and you apply it immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. You identify one expensive problem in your environment and you solve it before you are asked. You identify one person in your network who could benefit from a connection and you make that introduction. You identify one area of complexity in your work and you simplify it. You identify one commitment you have made and you fulfill it at a level that exceeds expectation, and then you do it again and again and again. Because value creation is not an event, it is a practice, it is a discipline, it is a standard you hold regardless of external recognition, reward, or validation. And when you hold that standard, when you operate from that level, the world rearranges itself around you, not because you demanded it, but because you made it inevitable. You are no longer waiting for opportunity. You are creating it. You are no longer competing for attention. You are commanding it. You are no longer asking for value. You are generating it. And when you generate it consistently, intelligently, and without compromise, the return is not a question. It is a certainty. This is how you create value in anything. This is how you transform ordinary situations into extraordinary outcomes. This is how you rise, not through luck, not through connections, not through shortcuts, but through mastery, through discipline, through the relentless, intelligent, strategic creation of value in every area of your life. And if you do this, if you commit to this path, you will never lack opportunity again. You will never question your worth again. You will never wonder if you are enough again, because you will have become someone the world cannot afford to ignore. Now go, apply, build, create. And remember, value given is never lost. It is only transformed, and transformation, when directed with precision, creates outcomes that most people will never understand, achieve, or even imagine. You are not most people. You never were. And now you know exactly what to do about it. Don't forget to give a like or a hype, and subscribe to the channel. Watch the next video to complete everything you just learned.